We are in hurricane season and looking ahead to the time of year when Maine can see severe storms. Last winter's storms, of course, were ones for the record books, and they caused major damage, especially along the coast.
Some of that coastal damage is still waiting to be repaired, and 207's Don Kerrigan is here with a part of that story: lighthouses.
Lighthouses, absolutely. A lot of lighthouse properties along the coast took a real beating from those January storms, and many of them, the towns and cities that own them, have not yet been able to start repairs as they still wait for word on FEMA funding to help pay for it. But in at least one town, they were able to dig deep and start getting the fixes done with help from money they had put aside and some help from their friends. Since January, this has become a signature image of those ferocious twin storms. The building is the 127-year-old Bell House at Pemaquid Point, devastated by the record waves like so many spots along the coast. But summer has seen a rebirth of the historic building. Bristol Parks and Rec, which manages the town-owned Lighthouse Park, brought in masons Larry Luce and Sam Smith to rebuild.
Yeah, we're putting it back pretty much the way it was.
It is a historically correct reconstruction.
Yeah, we had to use, I guess, like half of the materials, like half the brick, which we've used more than that, actually.
They salvaged as many of those original bricks as they could, found others to match, and rebuilt the whole thing from the ground up.
Yeah, exactly.
Larry Luce said he looked at an old photo to create the plan. And when we came back a few weeks later, they were doing the final few courses on the double-layer walls, duplicating what the storm destroyed with some extra reinforcement.
We've got some stainless steel rods that go right into the bedrock, up through to the main beam up there, and so we're going to bolt that down. And we've put rebar, fiberglass rebar, so it won't rust.
All of this making Parks Commission Chairman Clyde Pendleton a happy guy.
We were hoping that we could get it done this summer. And then when we hired Larry, he said, yep, we can build that.
And they did, as close as possible to an exact copy.
The tower is going to bolt through into the brick part of the building. It was before.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, I think that's what held up the roof.
The project is being paid for by donations and the Parks Reserve Fund, which had been saved for a new bathroom building until the storms came. Pemaquid is not the only lighthouse property that got damaged by those January storms. Far from it. Lighthouses all up and down this coast took a real beating, and in many cases, they're still waiting to make the repairs.
There's the problem, isn't it?
Such a place is Marshall Point Light in Port Clyde, famous for its role in the movie Forrest Gump.
That's the big deal. That's our second name, is the Forrest Gump Lighthouse.
But the walkway that Tom Hanks' character ran in the movie got clobbered by the storm.
The ferocity of the storm surge.
Diane Heath lives in the keeper's house and took these videos as the storm hit.
The water came up and it bit into that bank, and it was like chocolate milk, and it took 4 feet of that bank and exposed that pipe 4 feet.
That damage has now been patched up, but Nat Lyons showed us where the famous walkway took a severe hit. It's been closed since January.
Underneath, what the piers sit on have been eroded by the power of the surge that came through.
Have you come up with a cost estimate?
I think we're looking in the vicinity of $100,000.
The lighthouse property is owned by the town of St. George, which Lyons says is now waiting to see if FEMA money will come through to help pay for the rebuilding. And we're told that's a common situation at other lighthouses too.
And really caused damage that we haven't seen in decades.
Bob Trapani runs the American Lighthouse Foundation, which owns or leases 9 lighthouses in Maine and tracks many others. Some are owned by towns, others are now private. and many, he says, need money to make repairs.
I'm actually very concerned. It's one of those things where decades and decades have been invested in these lighthouses to bring them to where we see them today. And in a few hours of that storm, it was all wiped away. And not only that, but now the cost, we're all left reeling to figure out how we're going to move forward.
Pemaquid Point, he says, is their bright spot, where the town went ahead and funded repairs to the park, including the Bell House. Tourists love to visit here, as do the locals, so rebuilding was never in doubt. But this town also hopes FEMA will eventually reimburse them before the next big storms can hit.
With the way the weather changes, I don't know if it's a big cycle, you know, and it's kind of coming around, it'll go around again, or whether this is going to be the new norm. I think that's a big question in a lot of people's mind. I think a lot of people think this is going to be the new norm, but I hope not.
Lighthouses, of course, were built for bad weather. A lot of them now may need help to be ready for the next time. Getting ready for the next time, indeed. Now at Marshall Point Lighthouse there in Port Clyde, they're hoping that the town can get an okay on money so that they can get the equipment and people in there to rebuild those piers by late October or November before winter storms hit. Pemaquid Point, they're planning a celebration the 14th of September to have everything done. And I have to say that little bell house matters to a big chunk of our 207 team. Many years ago, my wife and I sat on the rocks beside it the night before we got married, and our own David Guildford a couple years ago proposed to his wife in the same spot.
Very true.
So
All right.
don't mess with that lighthouse.
We need to get some historic plaques up to commemorate those occasions.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Todd. All right, still to come here.